Arizona is experiencing a mega drought, and next year our state will face its first ever reduction of water from the Colorado River.
Yeah, it's called a Tier 1 shortage, but despite that, city and state leaders continue recruiting new businesses that require billions of gallons of precious water. Morgan Lowe is in our newsroom with tonight's investigation. Morgan, you profiled two very important, very big industries here in our state. What's going on here?
Yeah, Sean and Jamie, this is what it comes down to. We have government leaders telling us to conserve water. In some cases, they tell farmers they can't have water, and then they turn around and greenlight a new mega microchip factory that will use billions of gallons of water every year.
My granddad bought this farm in 1930.
Kaywood Farms has been in the Kaywood family for 5 generations. Is it a tough business?
You know, it's always a tough business, and we're dependent on weather. We don't know what Mother Nature's going to throw at us. Right now, she's throwing a drought at us.
Nancy Kaywood says this drought has been particularly tough. The farm's allocation from San Carlos Lake dried up earlier this year. Even after the wet summer, it's still not enough to grow a crop.
There's about 80 acres out here, and because of drought, we haven't been able to plant it.
This is the result. Dry, dusty, fallow fields. Could this really cost farmers their livelihoods?
Yes, it sure could.
All over Pinal County, you see the signs of the drought, empty fields, abandoned cotton gins, and it may get worse. The water allocation from the Colorado River through the Central Arizona Project Canal is set to drop in January and could disappear altogether in 2023. But north of Pinal County's dusty fields, an industry that also relies on large amounts of water is thriving and expanding. 2 giant semiconductor projects are getting underway. Intel is expanding in Chandler, and Taiwan Semiconductor is building its own microchip plant in North Phoenix. It's an industry that has had a sordid history in the Valley of the Sun.
It is a legacy in the Phoenix area that we're still living with today.
Dennis Shirley runs Synergy Environmental. He says the older microchip plants that employed thousands in Phoenix in the 50s, 60s, and 70s were major polluters, contaminating groundwater with cancer-causing solvents. But Shirley says the modern-day microchip plants are a far cry from their polluting predecessors. Do you think these companies are better environmental stewards today than they were 30, 40 years ago?
Oh, they've learned their lesson. So I would say with almost 100% certainty, yes.
The plants do still use a lot of water, but people in the business community say the trade-off is worth it.
These two companies could have produced these chips anywhere in the world, and they selected Greater Phoenix.
Chris Camacho is the president of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. He says these projects will create thousands of high-paying jobs and tens of thousands of indirect jobs. Why would we want these projects here when they use a lot of water?
These kind of uses in terms of providing high-quality jobs in this modern economy are critically important.
Taiwan Semiconductor is spending $12 billion on a microchip manufacturing complex at I-17 and the 303. The company weathered a major drought in Taiwan this summer. A spokesperson for the company told us, at our estimates, a drop of water is reused 3.5 times in our manufacturing process, and we achieve a 90% water recycling rate. In Chandler, Intel is spending $20 billion to build 2 new factories. The company used 5 billion gallons of water last year, but cleaned, then released 80% of the water back into the Chandler system for treatment and reuse. We're in a drought, a long-term drought. Farmers are having to cut back. Governments are asking that citizens cut back. What has Intel done to become more water conscious?
So Intel has been making significant investments in water conservation for well over the last 2 decades.
Linda Chan from Intel says the company sponsors projects that add water here in the valley and to other parts of the state.
In 2020, we funded projects that restored more than 600 million gallons of water to support Arizona watersheds.
When you see fields that are fallow, that are just dust bowls, how does that affect you?
I get really emotional about it because agriculture's, it's been in our family for so many years and we're trying to hang on to this farm.
Back in Pinal County, Nancy Kaywood says she understands the need to attract big business to Arizona, but she says she wishes policymakers gave her industry some attention in this time of crisis. Do you feel like farmers are getting the same respect from state lawmakers?
No, I don't.
Farmers say there are steps government leaders can take to help them through this drought. For example, lots of farmers are legally required to pay for their water allotment whether it's available or not. And that means that some of them end up paying for a product they're not receiving. All the while, they can't make money because they can't grow crops. Seen?
Yeah, Morgan, it does seem like the rules and laws that govern water are not applied evenly across the board. But to be fair, the ag industry here in our state, about a $20 billion economic impact. But the farmers, they do use more water than the industrial sector does, correct?
Yeah, it does. And that is important to point out. Even with these giant microchip plants, industry amounts to just 6% of the state's water consumption. Cities and residents use 22%. Agriculture uses 72%, so that is a lot. Now, farmers will say, we need the crops for food and clothing. See?
Yeah, two very, very important industries in our state. Thanks, Morgan. It's a lot to sort through.